Hello there, my name is Simon Farnaby. You might recognize me from Horrible Histories or Paddington 102 or Ghosts, but I'm also a children's author, and I'm here to talk to you today about my book, The Wizard in My Shed. Your brilliant local indie bookshop, Rogan's Books, has brought you this very special school event today, so let's get a-cracking. Well, The Wizard in My Shed is about a wizard, or actually you'd have to call him a warlock, he doesn't like being called a wizard, called Merdyn the Wild, and he's from the Dark Ages. He's a very naughty wizard, and so he gets punished. He gets sent into the rivers of purgatory, which is like the rivers of hell, but his rival actually sends him into the rivers of time, and he ends up in a modern day English town called Bashingford, where he's very scared of everything, like aeroplanes. You know, he's never seen them before. And he runs into a wood, and there he meets Rose, who is a 11-year-old girl. And Rose wants more than anything else to win a singing contest. And she's done a foolish thing and run away from home because nobody believes she's a very good singer, which I don't think she is. Rose has a guinea pig called Bobbles, who's quite a character. And so Rose and Merdyn have an unlikely sort of friendship. They strike a deal where Rose is going to help Merdyn get home, and Merdyn is going to help Rose to win a singing competition. And great hilarity ensues. Well, as a child, I always liked stories with very unlikely friendships. Things like E.T., a book called Stig of the Dump, and of course, the Paddington Adventures. One of the things we did on Paddington is we went, what would it be like if your best friend was a bear? Or, you know, in E.T., what would it be like if your best friend was an alien? So in this book, I thought it'd be fun to ask, what would it be like if you lived with a wizard? And so that's how it came about. And that's a good question. When I was younger, I was really into drama. I really liked doing drama at school. We used to do it at sort of lunch times, and it used to be a thing, sort of an after school club. And I just got really into it. And I did a few serious plays, but people would laugh at me anyway. So I decided that I was more into comedy. I quite like people laughing at me or with me. And so really that's how I got started. And then when I left university, I started writing my own little comedy sketches. They were only 2, 3, 4 minutes long. So that's how I got into writing. And from there, someone saw me and put me in a sketch show called Horrible Histories, which you may well know. And from there, I got into writing more comedy, and we wrote a show called Yonderland and then a show called Ghosts. And I got into writing films with the Paddington films. And that just led naturally to writing a book, which I'd always wanted to do. Well, it's a strange one. I don't know who wrote these books, but I loved a series of books called Sherlock Hound, which was a play on the Sherlock Holmes story. It was just like Sherlock Holmes, except instead of being a man, Sherlock Hound was a dog, and everyone in the stories were dogs. And I think there's about 8 of them, and that was the first sort of chapter book that I read, and I couldn't stop reading them. So they were great fun. But I remember reading Roald Dahl. I loved Roald Dahl, and now actually I've been rereading Roald Dahl with my daughter, and they're even better than I remember. Such great, brilliant, fun, vivid characters. Really funny. That's the main thing. I just love funny characters, and they got really nice villains as well. So yeah, I'd say those things. Yeah, it's very different writing a book, when you're writing for film and TV, you write the words, but somebody else really decides what the setting looks like and what the clothes people wear, and dialogue can change with the actor. It depends what actor you've got playing the part, whereas in a book you get to control all that. You can describe a room that someone's in, and you can describe a person and exactly what they look like and how they sound, and you can describe what clothes they wear. So it's very odd. It's like sort of being the writer, director, and art department and costume designer and everything on a film all at once, which is impossible. With a book, you can do it. I truly believe anyone can be. By the way, the light has changed because some dark thunderclouds have come in. I think I must have done something bad. I must have offended a witch, and they've put a hex upon me. But these things happen when you're writing a book about a wizard. Yes, I do believe anyone can be an author. It's a natural thing for humans to tell stories. Remember, for millions of years, we sat around campfires, you know, when in the Stone Age and before that, you know, we were just told stories because we didn't have TV or film or even books. So I think we are natural storytellers. It's all in there. I think there's basic things, little tips that can really help. Like my daughter, you know, when she's 7 and she's writing stories and she doesn't want anything bad to happen to any of the characters. And I always go, well, that's nice, but that's not a story that has ups and downs. So I just say to her, think of a character. What do they want is important. A character's got to want something, have a drive, and then what's in their way. And that's really all there is to it. Character, what do they want? And what stands in their way? Because if there's nothing in their way, you just go, a girl wants to win a singing contest, she wins a singing contest, the end. And then you don't really have a story. Whereas if you go, girl wants to win a singing contest, what's in her way? Well, she meets a wizard from the Dark Ages who's very mischievous and makes her life very difficult. Then you've got a story. So that's we can all do it, is what I'm saying. I think my favorite character in the book might be Merdyn the Wild, and he's sort of like one of my favorite characters. You know, in Horrible Histories, I play a character called Stupid Death, who is very sort of full of himself and finds everything very amusing, and people misfortune happening to other people is hilarious. And it's a bit like Merdyn, I suppose. It's a sort of character I like. It's a character who's quite big and bold, but is a bit of an idiot, but also has a heart. So I love Merdyn. Rose is great, but Bubbles the guinea pig is one of my favorites as well, because Merdyn conducts this spell on Bubbles that makes you hear his thoughts, basically can speak his thoughts. And that was a lot of fun to write because we had a pet guinea pig, and I often would wonder what it was thinking. And now I know. Well, the illustrations are really important. They really give a lot of color to the book and help the reader with their imagination, you know, that. And what happens is that the publisher sends you a few artists that they've worked with, and they do a few drawings, and then you choose one that fits with your book. And Claire just was superb, you know, as you can see from the cover there. And I have one here. This is one of my favorites. This is Merdyn. Merdyn, when he gets to Rose's house, he doesn't know how to use a toilet, and he thinks it's where you have a drink. So there he is, just slaking his thirst in the toilet, and that's Rose's brother looking at him horrified in the background. And that I just thought was hilarious, lovely, perfect, just as I imagined it. So yes, it's very important. Yes, I mean, I did do a lot of research, as much as you can do research on the Dark Ages, because the funny thing about the Dark Ages is nobody really knows what happened. That's why they call it the Dark Ages. It's sort of the time that history forgot. But what we do know, there was a lot of druids around, and there was people believed in magic. Magic was just a sort of part of life, you know, like electricity. It was like, yeah, there's magic. And so who knows? I did my best to study it, and I hope it's a fairly accurate representation with a little hint of magic. But yes, I did my research. I also had to sort of think about how people would have spoken, and I looked into a lot of the language that might have been used then, and we might have a little bit of a lesson later in the sort of words that people used in the Dark Ages. Right, I think it's time I read you a little piece from my book, The Wizard in My Shed. And I think I told you that so Merdyn has met a girl called Rose, and they strike up this unlikely friendship. They have a deal. And Rose is going to help Merdyn to get home. She doesn't know he's from the Dark Ages. She just thinks he's a bit weird. And in return, Merdyn's going to give Rose a singing spell. And in the meantime, Rose says she can stay at their house. Now, Rose's mum thinks that Rose just popped out for fish and chips. So they're on their way back from the woods, and they're walking along the road. It was slow going on the main road because every time a car went past, Merdyn jumped into a hedgerow or behind a bin. "Ah, what be these foul beasts?" he wailed as he picked himself up from the floor for the 10th time. "Beasts," said Rose. "Aye." Another car roared past, making Merdyn leap behind a lamppost. "Ah, there be another. They have wheels instead of legs, and emitteth a rancid stench from their back pipes." Rose looked at him. Now what was he on about? "Don't you have cars where you come from?" she asked. "Cars," said Merdyn, stressing the word very weirdly indeed. "Well, yeah, cars. People, use them to travel around." "Ah, 'tis a carriage," Merdyn deduced. "Yet, the carriage hath no horses, huh?" Rose just shook her head and carried on walking down the street. Moments later, Rose's smartphone went off in her bag, playing Beyonce's Crazy in Love as usual. "Uh-oh, uh-oh, 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 uh-oh. Ah, ye gods," cried Merdyn, slamming his hands over his ears. "What be that caterwauling?" Rose stopped walking and pulled out her phone. Her mum's face appeared on the screen. "Yeah, where's the fish and chips, love?" said her mum. Merdyn could not believe his eyes. He stared at the tiny woman, trapped in the little black square before him. "What black magic be this?" he whispered in horror. Yeah, sorry, Mum, I got a bit delayed," said Rose, blissfully unaware of Merdyn's mounting terror. "Well, hurry up, love, will you? I'm starving here." "Okay, Mum, I'll..." Rose had barely begun her sentence when Merdyn grabbed the phone from her hand and threw it on the pavement with great force. The screen smashed instantly. Crack! But stop!" Rose screamed. But the wizard warlock wasn't finished yet. He jumped and stamped on the phone for all he was worth, breaking it into tiny pieces. Then he threw himself to the ground and sifted frantically through the shattered glass and plastic with his fingers. He looked up at Rose, bemused. Where did she go?" "Where did who go?" yelled Rose. She couldn't remember a time she'd been angrier. "Why, the wicked witch in the box." "That was my mum. She was just at home." "Huh? Thy mother liveth in that tiny box," said Merdyn, aghast. "What happened? A hex? A curse? Did she fall foul of another wicked witch?" "What? No! Stop talking about witches," said Rose. "She wasn't in the box, you idiot. It's a smartphone." Merdyn looked at Rose, dumbfounded. "A start phone?" "Smartphone," Rose repeated. "Start phone?" he said again stubbornly. "Smartphone," Rose tried again, "and it cost a lot of money." "I told you, I have monies." Merdyn threw some more dirty pebbles at the livid Rose, which did not help. Rose threw the stones right back at him. Merdyn couldn't help wondering how odd it was that he had fought marauding murderers and crusading conjurers, but that was nothing compared to the wrath of this 12-year-old girl. She must really have liked that start foam. This singing spell had better make me really famous," yelled Rose, before picking up the broken pieces and putting them back in her bag. So there you are. Hope you enjoyed that. Earlier, I promised you that I was going to give you a lesson in Dark Ages language. There's lots of great words, weird and wonderful words for you to learn. I hope it doesn't leave you pitch-kettled, which means confused in Dark Ages language. So if you want to say, like my daughter says a lot, oh my God, or OMG, you would say Gad's Bodleekins, which literally means God's little body, and was used as a phrase showing sort of surprise or dread. Gad's Bodleekins. So that's one I like. There's another word which we still use now called farrago. I don't know if you've heard of that. What a farrago means a sort of mixture of things, a confused mixture of things. This originally came from Latin, which referred to a mixture of grains. So there we go. We've got a farrago here, and it was mixed different types of grains in bread. So that's one we still use now. One of my favorites is a fopdoodle. This was an insult, which is used referring to someone if you thought they were a sort of limp dawdler, you know, a bit sort of slow and a bit sort of limp, and you know. Now some people think this morphed over time into the Americanism dude. Hey dude. So fopdoodle became dude, which isn't so much an insult now. It's more like dude's like a laid back person's quite cool. So are you a fopdoodle or are you a dude? You choose. One of my favorites that Merdyn uses is a hufty tufty. Hufty tufty is someone who likes to talk up their abilities, likes to sort of show off. So next time you feel that someone's bragging, they're being a hufty tufty. And Merdyn uses this word as an insult, but really he's a bit of a hufty tufty, if truth be told. And finally, there's a word that Bubbles, the guinea pig, would love, which is caffaldy-cack, which literally means poo, which is what guinea pigs do about once every 7 seconds. Good question. Class 3 at Grylthorpe CV Primary School. Grylthorpe sounds like a sort of school for warlocks. Are you all warlocks? Anyway, a great name. So you write first. You write a few lines about what's in the chapter. So you know, Merdyn arrives from the Dark Ages in a shopping mall, for example. And then if your publisher thinks that's a good idea, then you write the chapter, and then you've probably got another 2 or 3 versions of it. So you do rewrite it 2 or 3 times, depending. You might get it right first time, but usually you need 2 or 3 goes at the chapter once you know what the chapter is going to be about. If I could be any character, that's a good question. I mean, Merdyn would be the obvious one. I do love Merdyn. But I also like playing out and out villains. Merdyn's a bit of a villain, but he's not a true villain. He's got a good heart. Jerabo. Now he's a villain. He's Merdyn's nemesis. So it might be that, because I quite like playing villains. Can be quite good fun because you get to be really horrible. So it might be Jerabo. Good question. When I used to do live comedy, that was terrifying, but good fun, you know, to get the applause on a night and hear people laughing. Being an actor on the TV is good fun because you get to mess around with your mates, my Horrible History pals, and on Ghosts, we're all good friends. But it's quite hard work because you have to get up really early. You have to get up about sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock, and you don't get home until 9 o'clock at night. And so I don't see much of my wife and daughter if I do that. So I would have to pick author because it's something I can do at home. I can walk the dogs, I can make myself lunch, and I can see my daughter when she gets home from school. So I'm going to say author. Thank you. We had 2 guinea pigs. which is one guinea pig too many. Anyone who knows guinea pigs, because they poo a lot, and you spend your life hoovering poo from the floor, cleaning out their cages. They're great animals, but I just couldn't take all the poo. So they were slowly sort of given away. Well, Bubbles lives with my brother now. His kids have got Bubbles up in North Yorkshire. And but we have a much smaller, we have a hamster now. So who knows, there might be a hamster in the next book. Thank you, North Stainley Primary School. My other hobbies, well, my dad was a greenkeeper at a golf club, so I actually play golf quite a bit, which I enjoy because I like grass and fresh air. There's lots of grass in the book, actually. And I like golf. I like walking my dogs. I love food, so I cook quite a lot. And what I like to do is go foraging. I don't know if you'll know foraging, and it can be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're looking for. But I do like to go out. It's wild garlic season at the moment, so I go and try and find wild garlic in hedgerows, and it's lovely to eat, and it's very satisfying when you pick your own things to eat. But you have to be careful. You have to know what you're looking for, because you can't just go and pick anything off the roadside and eat it. So you have to do your research, but that can be very satisfying. Well, funny you should say that, North Stainley Primary School kids. I'm currently writing a sequel to The Wizard in My Shed, which is going to be called The Warrior in My Wardrobe. And I can't tell you too much about it, except all the favorite characters will be back: Rose, Merdyn, and Bubbles. But this time they might spend more time in the Dark Ages. So I'm not saying more than that, but something happens where they have to go where it's going to be the reverse. So maybe Rose has to go to the Dark Ages for reasons you shall find out when you read the book. It's very exciting. I'm very excited by it and can't wait for you to read it. Good question, Moorside Primary School. This is going to sound terrible, but I would take my phone, my iPhone, even though, but I'll tell you why, not to make phone calls, but to make like videos of what it looks like, what it looked like, because I'm doing research now into the Dark Ages, some more research, because the second book is set a bit more in the Dark Ages, and things like London was just a load of rivers. It was like Venice. There was rivers everywhere, because where I live in London, there's rivers under our feet that were sort of buried or were sort of bulldozed over. So, but the rivers are still there deeper down. And so I would love to take little videos on my phone, and as long as I could come back to modern times, I think that would be very interesting for people to see what it was like, and the landscape and the vegetation, and compare it to what it's like now. Good question, Bursworth School. What did I like most? Well, it's fun, you know. I'm good friends with the people who I did it with, so we really would have a laugh. And what we tended to do was try and make each other laugh a lot while sticking to the script. We would try and surprise the other actor and make them laugh, and that was a lot of fun. And often you couldn't be too stupid. It's the only job I've done where the director says be more stupid, because usually they say be less stupid. You know, British usually goes more stupid, and so that probably comes across. Oh, good question. I am still learning new words. And there's words that you've heard, and then you're not quite sure what they mean. And then, I mean, I like doing this. I like looking in dictionaries, even for new words that I've never heard of, or I'll read, if I'm reading a book, I'll have a dictionary at my side to look the words up, because I love words. And one of my favorites that I used recently is this word ameliorate, which is very long and has lots of lovely vowel sounds. And it actually means to make more friendly or to make nicer, which is a lovely word. So let's say you have sort of you got a bunch of flowers and some of them are dying, and then you put some new flowers in. You could go, I've just ameliorated that vase of flowers. And it's to make nicer. It's a lovely word, and that's one I've really discovered recently. Look in a dictionary. It's a great thing to have. I have to say comedy, things that make me laugh are those are the best things. I love to laugh, and you know, even recently it's been difficult with lockdown and with, you know, it's this virus hanging around, but you've got to remember to laugh and to, you know, there's always a place for jokes and laughter. And so it's comedy, and I like family comedy because I like writing for grannies, parents and kids, and if they're all laughing, then that's very satisfying. I'll tell you who I admire more and more is Charles Dickens. And you probably go, oh, I know Charles Dickens, and heard people talk about him and think it's all very grown up, but he's very silly and has very silly characters, and very funny characters. He's really, really amusing. And so as soon as you're old enough, I recommend Charles Dickens, and don't be afraid of it and think it's for grown-ups. They're great stories, really epic, wonderful stories, but with a lot of humor and great characters. So get stuck into Dickens as soon as you can. Ideas, yes, I suppose. I do little footnotes in The Wizard in my shed. I mean, there is a historical bent to it, you know, it's the Dark Ages and modern times, and I think it's interesting how times have changed and how behavior changed and languages changed. And the little footnotes I put in the book describing words and little factual things is maybe there's a nod to Horrible Histories there. There's a sort of, this was true and isn't it interesting, and just to be, it's not as educational as Horrible Histories, but there's a bit in there. And so I owe that to Horrible Histories, yeah. Good question. I mean, it has to be Merlin. And Merlin, what's interesting is I was researching wizards, or thinking about wizards for this book, and I found this poem. The origins of Merlin was a poem about a Welsh guy called Merdyn. Actually, Merdyn the Wild, he was called, and this was a poem about a guy who had been in the army and felt terrible about being at war, and he went off into the woods, and the myth was that he made a deal with a spirit in the woods that would give him magical powers, and when he came out of the woods he had these powers, and he was called Merdyn the Wild. Slowly over time this morphed, the word morphed into Merlin. So you can take that and make what you will of that, but there are definitely comparisons with Merlin and my Merdyn, shall we say. I mean, the obvious one is the T-Rex, but I think it's the Diplodocus, mainly because I like saying the word Diplodocus. It's a fun word, but I like their long necks, and I like that they have a sort of very steady sloping you know, they take their own time doing things, which is what I'm like a little bit. So I'm going to say Diplodocus for those reasons. I think I would ask him to do a pinecone spell on my dogs. The pinecone spell allows you to hear the thoughts of animals. So my dogs could tell me what's wrong with them, when they're hungry, when they want to walk. We can talk about TV together. Would we get along? Probably. So I am very sad to say that that is all we have time for. I'm going to wrap up now, but to say thank you all for watching this little video and coming up with those amazing questions. I love those questions. Thank you. And I hope you enjoyed listening to me talking, and I hope you'll be reading The Wizard in My Shed. And so for now, I'm going to disappear as if by magic.